Hey everyone! Before I start this classic album review, I just wanted to say thank you all again to everyone who watched, liked, and commented on my Record Store Day haul video. It was a lot of fun to record, but it was even more fun to interact with all of you and talk about your favorite picks. Oh, and don't worry, my Pink Floyd copy is fine. It wasn't one of the mispresses, but thank you for all bringing that to my attention. We're good. Had a fun little heart attack there for about 5 minutes. It was good. So to follow and understand this next album, we need to travel back to the early 1970s. Progressive rock, psychedelic rock, and space rock had taken all kinds of forms, particularly throughout the UK and the US, but one of the things that made Gong so interesting, at least to me, is that they were actually formed in Paris, France. Even more interesting, the group was founded by Daevid Allen. He is an Australian man. For those who don't know, Daevid Allen was also co-founder of the band Soft Machine, so if his name sounded familiar to you, that was probably the reason. And another funny fact to add on to that is that the rest of the musicians, I believe, were all from the UK. So you've got Paris, France, you've got the UK, and you've got Australia. That is a hell of a combination. The band's first album, Magic Brother, was more of a straightforward psychedelic pop rock album, but the second album, Camembert Electric, began the more progressive rock, jazzy, space rock sound that we would come to know them for. Some would even argue that it was their best album in general. That's become a pretty popular opinion, I believe. But Daevid Allen wasn't done yet. In fact, he was just getting started. Which brings us to Flying Teapot, the first in a trilogy of albums called the Radio Gnome Invisible Trilogy, this being part 1. The trilogy attempted to bring together an entire mythology for the band, with fantasy characters representing each band member. Gong, as far as the story paints it, is a planet filled with what are known as the pothead pixies, as seen on the cover here. There's one flying around. The fact that they fly around in teapots is actually supposed to be a reference to Bertrand Russell's famous analogy, Russell's Teapot. I won't go into the entire philosophy behind this series of albums, as there would be so much to go through. You could write an entire book on it, which I would read, but know that it is silly, whimsical, drugged out, trippy, and full of references to philosophical concepts like Buddhism. That said, it is also complex as hell musically. While the genres I listed before, psychedelic rock, progressive rock, space rock, are what this album gets labeled under, it's also got a fair amount of jazz going on, with Didier Malherbe, I hope I pronounced that right, I probably didn't, on the saxophone to really bring it all in. I particularly liked the jazzy sections in the songs Flying Teapot and Zero the Hero and the Witch's Spell. The first track, Radio Gnome Invisible, lays out some of the groundwork for the album's setting and direction, and has a catchy little tune to boot. Da 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 da. The second song, Flying Teapot, is a real high point on the album for numerous reasons, biggest of all being the strong instrumentals that carry the track along. Between all the spacey sound effects and world building, we see some nice guitar work from Stephen Hillage. He was unfortunately not a big part of this album due to joining the band after most of it had already been recorded, but with that said, his performance here was excellent, and he would go on to work more prominently with the band's future projects. I also have to give credit to Laurie Allen, the drummer, who did a great job of keeping up with both Hillage and Malherbe on top of throwing in plenty of his own drum fills into the mix. The whole song just has an amazing build-up through what feels like we're sinking into murky depths, only to pull us out with this very hopeful-sounding synthesizer melody at the end of the jam by Tim Blake. Have a cup of tea, have another one, have a cup of tea, hey! After this we get a strange but really interesting and atmospheric interlude, followed by a quick outro and then a move on to track 3, Pothead Pixies. This song hits us with yet another catchy little jingle to recite over and over again. I am, you are, we are crazy. They even have a lyric which says, ding dang dong, singing the song, it's pretty catchy. I had a good laugh over that since they weren't kidding here. Following this is The Octave Doctors and The Crystal Machine, which is about 2 minutes of pure, again, atmosphere, just brought on by Tim Blake's synthesizers once again. It serves as a great lead-in to the following track, another one of my favorites, as I was saying, Zero the Hero and the Witch's Spell. This song has, I'll say, the least amount of lyrics on the album, but more than makes up for it with the more wonderful instrumentals. As I started to talk about earlier, Didier Malherbe, again, hope I'm saying saying that name right, really shines on here with his saxophone playing, proving that he could actually rival just about any of the other jazz artists that were coming out at the time. Really, really strong performance. The intro to this song also deserves a mention, as it evokes that same kind of raw feeling and emotion you'd get from bands like Pink Floyd around the same period. If you didn't already feel like you had been transported to another universe before, you'd certainly be there now. And that leaves us with the final track, Witch's Song, I Am Your... cat. Wow, does Jilly Smith shine in this one. Up until this point, she had mainly done the space whisper sounds that you'd hear throughout the album, along with some vocal harmonies here and there, but here she goes out in full force, portraying this cat who is actually a witch. The chorus section of the song, with her evil-sounding laughter, absolutely blew me away. Between the convincing nature of her character and the synthesizer effects to go with it, I'd never heard anything quite like it before. The album ends with the main character, Zero the Hero, giving fish and chips to this cat, finding out that the cat is actually a witch in the process, and the witch rewards Zero by giving him a potion. Is she evil? Nobody knows. To be continued. No, really, that's pretty much what it says over here in these notes. There's a lot of notes in here. It's interesting. It's real interesting. This isn't necessarily the band's strongest effort, as many Gong fans will tell you albums like Camembert Electric and You, the third album in this trilogy, are typically considered to be the better releases, and the themes can obviously get very silly, but I still believe that this is a must-listen. There are moments of pure musical greatness sprinkled throughout the ambience and the spacey parts that still make it an essential listen. I can fully understand this album not being everyone's cup of flying tea. In fact, the first time I heard it, about 10 years ago or so, I was a little confused by it after that first listen, as it wasn't quite like any other psychedelic or progressive rock I had heard up to that point. Since then, and after multiple listens, it truly grew on me, and I began to appreciate all of the little details put into this really unique piece of work. I would suggest treating this album the same way that you would a Captain Beefheart release. Give it room to breathe, and I believe that you too will see just what I'm talking about, and find plenty to love in it, as I certainly have. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Please remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons below for more musical fun, and I will see you all later.